Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
You used to be a member of a group called the Young Communist, didn't you?
Senator, are you referring to my membership in the Youth Communist Organization while I was growing up in the Soviet Union?
I don't know. I wanted to ask you that question.
Well, Senator,
There was a group called the Young Communists, and you were a member. Is that right?
I'm not exactly sure which group you're referring to.
Well, the formal name of it is the Leninist Communist Young Union of the Russian Federation.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, where truth meets the Senate floor. Today's video dives into an intense moment from a Senate Banking Committee hearing. We'll witness the verbal showdown between Senator John Kennedy and Professor Saule Omarova. Grab your popcorn because this wasn't just a hearing, it was a, let's break it down.
And it's also known as the Leninist Komsomol of the Russian Federation, and it's commonly referred to as the Young Communists. Were you a member?
Senator, I was born and grew up in the Soviet Union.
Yes, ma'am, but were you a member of that organization?
Everybody in that country was a member of the Komsomol, which was the Communist Youth Organization, because
So you were a member?
That was a part of normal progress in school.
Have you resigned
From the youth,
from the Young Communists?
you grow out of it with age, automatically.
Did you send them a letter though, resigning?
Senator, this was many, many years ago. As far as I remember how the Soviet Union worked, was at certain age, you automatically stop being a member of that
Could you look at your records and see if you can find a copy of your...
Senator Kennedy, I don't interrupt. I almost never interrupt these, but
Well, you always interrupt me, Mr.
no,
President,
actually I
and
don't.
I
Not nearly as
won't
many
pursue-
times
I
as I'd
won't
like to.
pursue
No,
the line of questions.
she renounced her Soviet citizenship.
Well, I understand that, but you're not the witness, she is. Would you look at your records and see if you can find a letter of resignation for me?
Senator, as I explained, I was part of the Soviet population.
Yes, ma'am, I got that part. I just want to see if you look at your records and see if you find a letter of resignation.
It starts with a polite greeting. Good morning, Professor. Good morning, but Senator Kennedy quickly shifts gears. Boom, the opening shot. Omarova tries to clarify, and Kennedy presses harder. Now here's where things get intense. Omarova explains that joining was standard practice in Soviet schools. What? A resignation letter to a Soviet youth group from decades ago? The tension in the room could have been sliced with a knife. Kennedy doesn't stop there. He asks if she can. At this point, it's about probing deeper into ideology. Before we jump into what Kennedy discovered about Omarova, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We cover moments mainstream media trims out. You won't find these unfiltered breakdowns anywhere else. All right, back to the fireworks.
Let me tell you what, I've spent a lot of time on your record, and here's what I found. Look, this is America. You can believe what you want, but we can't just let anybody be controller of the currency. You wrote your thesis in college at Moscow State University on, the title was Karl Marx's Economic Analysis and the Theory of Revolution in the Capital. But you won't send Senator Toomey a copy. You studied at Moscow State University, scientific communism, which is the science regarding the working class struggle and the socialist agenda. In 2019, not 30 years ago, in a Canadian documentary, you called the financial services industry, quote, a quintessential asshole industry. You wrote a paper called Systemically Significant Prices, calling for the federal government to set wages, food, gas prices. In 2020, you wrote a paper called The People's Ledger, where you said we need to abolish bank accounts and make everybody set up an account at the Fed where the federal government will have access to your data. In 2020, you wrote another paper called The Climate Case for a National Investment Authority, where you said what we need to do, the oil and gas industry, is have the federal government bankrupt them so we can tackle climate change. In 2019, you joined a Facebook group, a Marxist Facebook group, to discuss socialist and anti-capitalist views. Now, that's what I see from your record, and you have the right to believe every one of these things.
Kennedy pulls out the receipts. He lists things he found in Omarova's record, a thesis titled Karl Marx's Economic Analysis, a course called Scientific Communism, papers on government control of wages and prices, a proposal to move money to the Federal Reserve, a plan to bankrupt the oil and gas industry, and joining a Marxist Facebook group. Then comes the zinger. I don't know whether to call you professor or comrade. The hearing room freezes. Omarova fires back. Her family suffered under Soviet communism. She escaped it and came to America. I'm not a communist. I'm proud to be an American.
But I don't mean any disrespect. I don't know whether to call you professor or comrade.
Senator, I'm not a communist. I do not subscribe to that ideology. I could not choose where I was born. I do not remember joining any Facebook group that subscribes to that ideology. I would never knowingly join any such group. There is no record of me ever actually participating in any Marxist or communist discussions of any kind. My family suffered under the communist regime. I grew up without knowing half of my family. My grandmother herself escaped death twice under the Stalin regime. This is what's seared in my mind. That's who I am. I remember that history. I came to this country. I'm proud to be an American.
As Kennedy continues, the hearing derails into chaos. Senator Warren pushes back on what she calls character assassination. Kennedy defends his right to question. This is America. We can't just let anybody be comptroller of the currency. There's shouting, interruptions, and a war of words. So what do you think? Did Kennedy cross the line, or was he right to dig that deep? Is Omarova's past relevant to her nomination? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Until next time, stay informed, stay bold,